21. Item 18, Hancock, SB 1127. Item 22, Pan, SB 1238. Item 24, Nielsen, SB 1295. Item 28, Galgiani, SB 1330. And the committee bill, item 37, SB 1474. Is there a motion on the consent calendar? Moved by Senator Leno, thank you, and Senator Anderson. Please read the roll.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson.
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Glazer. Glazer, aye. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, aye. Liu. Liu, aye. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, aye. Stone. Stone, aye.
Okay, the consent calendar passes, and Senator Jackson, welcome to the committee.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I'd like to present Senate Bill 868, which is a bill that establishes a basic set of sensible and intelligent drone regulations that strike a balance between protecting public safety, our right to privacy, and our wildlife, while encouraging exciting innovation and technology. And before I begin with my presentation, I would like to take a moment to talk about the penalties and enforcement and the suggested amendments to the bill, which I would like to accept as author's amendments, which are as follows. First, I want to make sure that the Department of Transportation employees tasked with enforcing this bill are properly trained. So I'd like to accept the suggested amendment in comment 5 that enforcement power be limited to employees who have received designation under Penal Code Section 830.7. Second, I would like the bill to clearly state the penalties up front instead of through a cross-reference so that all drone operators are aware of the possible consequences that exist for breaking the law. And my focus in this area has always been about reforming behavior and not about imposing penalties. I drafted this bill largely as an extension of the State Aeronautics Act, and so I incorporated by reference the penalties from that act into this bill, along with parallel provisions for infractions on other types of land, as in state parks. It appears that with the growth of penalty assessments, many of our fines and fees have grown well beyond what was originally envisioned in the State Aeronautics Act. So I would like to follow the committee's recommendation that infractions be limited to an amount up to $250, that fines be limited to an amount up to $1,000, and that incarceration be limited to up to 6 months, so that there's no question, and I appreciate the work of the committee staff in assisting us in making those clarifications. These limits strike me as sufficient enough to deter dangerous behavior while not being overly prescriptive. So with that, as author's amendments, and my appreciation to staff for their assistance in this. Drones. The development of small unmanned aircraft systems, often known as unmanned aerial vehicles, remotely piloted aircraft, or simply drones, promises to revolutionize the way Californians interact with each other and their environment. This technology could transform the way California's farmers and ranchers manage their livestock and agricultural resources. It could also fundamentally alter the way goods move across our state and greatly improve the capacity of our emergency personnel to respond to disasters. However, the lack of clear rules governing the use of this emerging technology threatens to undermine public safety and harm California's natural resources. To date, the lack of regulation on drone use has led to disputes between neighbors concerned with invasion of their privacy, led to impacts to wildlife, near collisions with airplanes and helicopters, interference with firefighting efforts, and accidents injuring innocent bystanders. And indeed, just 2 days ago at Heathrow Airport, a drone flew into an airplane. and caused damage to the plane. It was British Airways flight from Geneva with 132 passengers and 5 crew on board. Fortunately, the impact was above the cockpit, not in the cockpit, not in the jets themselves. The plane was able to land, was able to do an analysis, and was able to continue flying. This is the first. There have been near misses at Los Angeles Airport. There have been near misses all around California and all around the country, and indeed all around the world. And a number, as I was reading this article, of at least a half a dozen to a dozen near misses in Heathrow previous to this actual contact that was made. So this isn't something that is sort of pie in the sky. This is not somebody's imagination. This is the reality as we see more and more drones being sold, being used, being available. We must develop some kind of approach to addressing this very exciting, but also very potentially dangerous technology. Some individuals are reportedly modifying drones to carry weapons. And in at least one instance, a drone was used to land radioactive material on the roof of a government building. Irresponsible or even dangerous operators and their drones should simply not be allowed to threaten our safety, our private property, the critical infrastructure we need to keep our state running, or our beloved state parks and wildlife refuges. Clearly, or nearly, I should say, every day we hear of another potentially dangerous or destructive incident involving a drone, and we simply cannot wait for disaster to strike before setting clear, common-sense rules that provide certainty for everyone while keeping the public safe. That is the spirit in which this bill is introduced to you today. SB 868, the State Remote Piloted Aircraft Act, implements these common sense rules, ensuring that drone use does not harm our wildlife, threaten our critical infrastructure, undermine privacy interests, or become a platform for the deployment of weapons, or to be used to drop drugs into prison courtyards, an incident which has already happened. Among other things, SB 868 limits drone use within 500 feet of critical infrastructure, within 1,000 feet of a heliport, or within 5 miles of an airport without permission. It limits disruptive drone use near private property. It limits drone use over state parks, wildlife refuges, the state capitol, or other designated safety areas without a permit or permission. And indeed, right over our own state capitol, there have been a number of drone incidents, and if anyone wishes to get more information about that, we do have the Highway Patrol here who can talk to us about these incidents located that have occurred right here, right around our capitol. It also prohibits the weaponization of drones, the reckless operation of drones, and drone interference with manned aircraft, and requires commercial drone operators to obtain liability insurance. This measure continues to allow local governments to regulate drone use in their communities and provides exceptions for skilled operators who have received authorization from the Federal Aviation Administration to fly in otherwise restricted areas. And the bill directs the Division of Aeronautics and other state agencies to work cooperatively with local governments and the federal government to enforce this regulatory framework. Now, since this bill is in the Public Safety Committee, I want to address, or as I did address, some of the issues that were of concern. I believe that we want the Department of Transportation, which will be taking responsibility through the Division of Aviation, which does have responsibility now for the state's area of jurisdiction in dealing with aerial aircraft. Drones are a form of aircraft, but they are a unique form. And so we have had instances where drones have crashed, the police have been called out, and instead of addressing this as an aerial vehicle, they believe that this constitutes a vehicle or an item similar to a Frisbee. These are not Frisbees. They are drones, and drones have to be acknowledged for what they are, and that is aerial vehicles. And so we put this under that department to be consistent, to be clear, to give the authority of an agency which has this authority in dealing with FAA regulations and dealing with other aviation experiences and responsibilities that we have as a state, because the FAA doesn't control everything. And the state has its responsibilities. We want to include drones as part of that. And I mentioned the area of penalties, which we have in the bill, which we have adjusted to be consistent with your concerns, and also consistent with existing law in dealing with other aerial violations. So I have with me today Tim Cromartie with the League of California Cities and other supporters to testify in support of the bill and help answer any technical questions you may have. Thank you for your consideration, and I would respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Those in support?
Madam Chair and members, Tim Cromartie on behalf of the League of California Cities, also on behalf of the California Police Chiefs Association, who could not be here today. We're pleased to support this measure. It is an important, comprehensive attempt at legislation over the regulation of drones, which is extremely necessary in light of the extent of illicit drone activity over the past 2 years, including interference with first responder aircraft and as the Senator noted, a growing threat to commercial aviation. 2 months ago, the League of California Cities issued a comment letter to the Federal Aviation Administration calling into question the weakness of the existing federal regulations, and specifically in light of the threat to commercial aviation, why there was no mandatory point-of-sale registration included within those regulations. But to speak to the bill, it contains important provisions bringing California into conformity with federal law, specifically no flights within 5 miles of airports. That is of particular concern given the near miss of the Lufthansa airliner at LAX 3 weeks ago, and just Sunday, as the Senator noted, an actual collision with a British Airways aircraft. The bill also includes protection for specific structures within the state designated as critical by the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. Most critically for cities, it protects the ability of local jurisdictions to enact local regulations, which are currently the most comprehensive regulations that are in place in California, unfortunately. Those local regulations will be necessary at least until more comprehensive state and federal regulations are enacted. We're grateful to Senator Jackson for bringing this measure forward. And on a final note, we'd like to highlight the fact that the FAA in a December 2015 document specifically highlighted the fact that they clearly contemplate state and local regulations within the overall regulatory scheme.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Jenna Price on behalf of the California League of Conservation Voters. And while we support the entirety of this comprehensive approach, there's one area that we obviously want to focus on, which is the impacts to the environment. UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles, can be extremely noisy. They can impact the natural landscape, having negative impacts on wildlife nearby. And studies have reported, actually, that increased heart rates of animals encountering UAV flights adding a new stressor to wildlife that can affect their migratory patterns, their breeding habits, and their habitats. We think this is a technology that's becoming more and more prevalent daily. And as such, we need to start considering the unintended consequences, both in our natural environment and those species living in it. And we ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Others in support of the bill, please just do a me too.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Jim Ewert for the California Newspaper Publishers Association. We don't have a support position, but we want to thank the author and her staff for working with us on concerns that we've raised. And with the amendments that are in the bill now, we are neutral. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in support? Seeing and hearing none, are there speakers in opposition to the bill? Please come forward. There's one speaker in opposition. We'll have 2 speakers in opposition. I'm going to ask people to please limit their remarks to 2 minutes each.
Maria
Thank you.
Garcia with State Farm Insurance. We are opposed unless amended to the measure. We want to thank the author and her staff for committing to work with us on our issues. There are two in particular, one more technical in nature regarding the specific language surrounding the FAA exemption to ensure that that language is going to be consistent moving into the future where the federal government is going. And then the more specific concern relating to the mandate in the bill for commercial liability insurance, which is a product that's not yet ready and available in the marketplace, but we do understand the desire for financial responsibility requirements, and we're working with the author and her staff to find a nice middle ground on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Steve Shea for DJI, also in opposition. We think the bill is largely preempted
Could
by
you
the
say
FAA.
what DJI is?
DJI, which is the world's largest manufacturer of drones, both commercial and recreational. We think it's largely preempted by the FAA. Congress has reserved this to the federal government, the regulation of the airspace. There are regulations underway that are expected by the end of the year or early next year with respect to small UAS. So that really is a matter of law in terms of federal preemption and not so much policy or opinion. I think that's the main reason. We're concerned that setting up a very extensive state regulatory structure will stymie innovation and experimentation, and this technology is really just getting going, so we're opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in opposition?
Madam Chair and members, Kate Bell on behalf of the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International. We look forward to working with the author's office, but at this moment we're still opposed. Thank you.
Anthony Molina on behalf of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association in opposition.
Tim Lynch on behalf of GoPro, and we're opposed to the bill as well.
Okay, others in opposition? Seeing and hearing none, questions or comments from committee members or a motion on the bill? Senator Stone.
Yes, thank you, sir. I would like to direct my question to you, if I may. Can you talk about the federal laws? My concern is what the senator brought forward with regard to what happened at Heathrow Airport, what happened at LA Airport, and we've seen issues in fires in Riverside County where people are flying drones and aircraft that are dropping retardant could possibly come into a collision. Can you explain how federal law covers those issues today, and this may be a preemption?
Yes. Well, the federal law prohibits flying in federal airspace and in the takeoff and landing paths of aircraft. I know the drones that are made by DJI do have a geofencing technology that keeps them from flying into those airspaces. So with respect to the 5-mile prohibition in this particular bill, it's very different than the FAA requirement, which just requires a notification of the tower that you're going to be flying there. Requiring permission from the FAA is something that the FAA really isn't set up to do, and so that's what's something in this bill. And at 5 miles from an airport would probably cover all of Sacramento between the two airports in Sacramento, so you'd be restricting quite a bit of airspace in a densely populated state like California.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Thank you. Other questions or comments, or is there a motion on the bill? Senator Glazer?
Madam Chair, I did note in the opposition's comments concerns about stymieing innovation investment, and that's not anything that I certainly would want to do, but I also don't see anything in the bill as written that, tries to clamp down on the great work of our technology pioneers here in our state. And because of that, I know the author will look for concerns that are raised that she might consider modifying to make sure that we don't stymie that kind of technological innovation. And with that, I'd be happy to move the bill.
Thank you. The bill has been moved. Senator Jackson, I noted that you took a number of amendments that were suggested by the committee. I didn't hear anything about clarifying the amendments regarding prohibition of flying drones near the Capitol. Did you, and I just missed it, or?
The bill does reference, the Capitol is actually a state park, and so this would prohibit the flying of drones over state parks as well, if I'm not mistaken. And we can, if you wish to have the CHP discuss that, but the whole area, the gardens and what have you, is a state park. and the Capitol is within the confines of that state park. And we have had a number of problems, as I mentioned, with that. So it is included in the bill that there would be a prohibition against state parks, and the Capitol actually is a state park.
I thought it was 500 feet.
To fly within 500 feet of a state park.
Yeah. Okay, you might want to look at that going forward.
Certainly,
in terms
happy to
of
do that.
if somebody had their toy airplane out at the end of the park, which would be quite a way away. But the bill is moving forward to appropriations, and I think many of these things could be taken care of. Senator Leno?
Madam Chair, I do have one question. Just wanted to confirm, I think this was touched on in testimony, that this would not preempt any local government from taking its own steps, for example, in a city or county park.
Absolutely, and that we respect the right of local jurisdictions to impose greater standards if they so choose. With respect to the concerns about being federally preempted, in December, as was referenced by one of our witnesses, the federal government acknowledged that laws traditionally related to state and local police powers, such as land use, zoning, privacy, trespass, and law enforcement operations generally, are not subject to federal regulation. And in fact, the FAA has encouraged the state to take steps within the zone where states have otherwise been determined to have jurisdiction. I will say, to the extent that there is when the FAA, if and when it does come down with its rules and regulations, if there's any concern, I'm sure there'll be litigation, and if we are federally preempted, we will be so advised. At this point, however, we don't believe legally that will be the case. The feds have been moving rather slowly these days. The issue about public safety is one that predominates, I think, the conversation about drones in California, and I will mention to Senator Glazer that I am very mindful of the value, the extraordinary technological advances and things that drones can do to be a positive influence, and I want to encourage that. This bill is an attempt to create a balance so that we are protected, so that law enforcement can do its job, so that we can be assured that our wildlife isn't impaired by this. There are instances where someone flew a drone down on the beach in La Jolla while, was it a sea lion, was birthing its pups and interfered with that process, creating unnecessary stress that may have impacted what ultimately happened. I mean, unless we create some kind of controls and tell people what behaviors are and are not going to be acceptable with this new technology. We are expecting, the FAA estimates there will be 7 million drones that will have been purchased by the year 2020. 7 million drones. Without any rules, this is the Wild West. This bill tries to create a balance, a reasonable one. You'll note that we have the support of law enforcement, the League of Cities. I am happy to continue working on this issue, but this truly is an issue whose time has come. And with that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Thank you. The motion is due pass to appropriations. Please read the roll.
Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Glazer? Aye. Glazer, aye. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Lou? Lou, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Stone?
No.
Stone, no.
Okay, 5-2, that bill is out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I have one other bill.
And that is,
File item 894, SB 894.
yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. SB 894 would strengthen our gun laws by requiring a person to report the theft or loss of a firearm within 5 days that the person knew or should have known reasonably that their firearm had been lost or stolen. This bill would provide that a first and second offense would be punished by an infraction, and that the third or subsequent offense would be punishable as a misdemeanor. Currently, 10 states and the District of Columbia and several cities, including Port Hueneme in my district, require firearm owners to report to local law enforcement when their firearms are lost or stolen. The state of California, however, does not have such a requirement. Under current law, firearm dealers and manufacturers must report any lost or stolen firearms within 48 hours, and local law enforcement must enter reports into the state's automated property system database. However, firearm owners whose guns are lost or stolen are not required to do anything. As a result, law enforcement efforts to investigate gun crimes and disarm dangerous criminals are significantly hindered. This bill would bring several critical improvements to public safety in California. First, this bill would provide a tool for law enforcement to detect firearms trafficking and prosecute straw purchasers. These are individuals who buy firearms on behalf of those who cannot pass a background check or are in the armed prohibited persons system, otherwise known as APS. An analysis in 2010 by mayors against illegal guns found that states without mandatory lost or stolen reporting laws export 2.5 times more crime guns across state lines than jurisdictions who have such laws. Second, this bill would enhance the Department of Justice's efforts to remove firearms from those in the APS system, those who are prohibited to have them. Currently, these individuals may falsely claim that their illegally possessed firearms were lost or stolen, undermining and thus defeating the effort of removing those weapons from these individuals. Finally, the bill would alert law enforcement to the existence of guns stolen by criminals in their communities. A 2007 report by the International Association of Chiefs of Police recommended that state and local governments mandate reporting of lost or stolen firearms, concluding that it would enable police to respond more rapidly to a report of a stolen firearm and possibly return it to its owner or trace down the thieves before it is used in a crime or sold that subsequently will be used in a crime. Members, this issue is extremely important to, I believe, all of our local communities, certainly in my district, and I'm sure it is important to your constituents as well. We cannot wait for tragedy to strike again before we enact this common sense law to reduce unnecessary gun violence. And as stated in the Chiefs of Police report, gun violence reaches across borders and jurisdictions and compromises the safety of everyone along the way. I would like to introduce Wayne Billowit, who is with the LA County Sheriff's Department, and Amanda Wilcox with the California chapter of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, who are both here in support of this bill. With that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you.
Again, Amanda Wilcox on behalf of the 27 California chapters of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. A requirement to report lost and stolen firearms has been a long-term priority for our organization. We have been sponsors of previous bills that tried to accomplish this. And particularly this year, our coalition actually in California, one of our priorities is to focus on illegal guns and how do these illegal guns get into impacted communities in our state where they cause so much harm. We know from data that straw purchasers are a big source of illegal guns in our nation and, of course, in our state. And as the senator indicated, that a reporting requirement would give a tool to law enforcement who recover a gun used in crime, trace it to the last legal buyer who's a straw purchaser. And without this reporting requirement, they can falsely claim, oh, my gun was lost or stolen, and it makes the investigation and prosecution of that difficult without this requirement. States that have a loss and reporting stolen requirement are responsible for our source of fewer crime guns. Fewer guns come from states with a lost and stolen reporting requirement. I didn't put that very well. So obviously it's an important tool for disrupting the criminal market. The other important benefit of this bill is with our Armed Prohibited Person System program. Again, when DOJ goes to a home because their records have found that someone who is prohibited had a gun registered to them, and they go to the home and the person just says, well, the gun was lost or stolen, and maybe it very well was. It would be nice if DOJ knew that before they spent the resources to go and recover that gun that had already been, that was no longer in possession. So it would make that program more efficient, which I have heard many times that all members support that. And then finally, the early reporting of a stolen gun is very important for law enforcement. The earlier they know about a theft, the more likely they can recover that gun before it is used again in crime. So we are in strong support of this measure and urge your aye vote.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Lieutenant Wayne Billowit on behalf of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. A few years back, we were the sponsors of this legislation. We feel it's very, very important not to repeat anything that Ms. Wilcox already said, but it is very important for law enforcement on the lost and stolen, so we urge your support. Thank you.
Others in support of the bill?
Lydia Bourne, representing American Academy of Pediatrics. We are in support of any attempt to address prevention in terms of gun violence, and so we are in support.
Thank you.
Ari Freilich on behalf of the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence.
Thank you. Others in support? Speakers in opposition to the bill?
Thanks for your vote.
Well, Senator, how are you?
Will, how are you doing?
Welcome.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Ed Worley with the National Rifle Association. We do not oppose people reporting lost or stolen guns. That is something we should make clear with everybody here. But what we oppose is criminalizing the act of people not meeting a certain specific deadline. The bill says you have to report it within 5 days, okay? So the problem is now you're victimizing the victims of crime. You have somebody whose house is burglarized. So you're trying to figure out what guns were in the house and everything else, and you're trying to get this done. As we've done this bill yet again and again and again, and this is another bill that the governor already vetoed, so we're doing the bill again, the governor already vetoed, so here we are again. But this bill has a little bit of a twist to it. Not only are you required to report the gun lost or stolen within 5 days, is that if you find out that the gun was at your brother's house instead of at grandpa's house, you have 48 hours to report that you found the gun. So the twist we have on this is not only criminalizing the fact that you don't have all the material and data you need when you report the gun lost or stolen, or you try to add a gun onto it. Now we're going to also criminalize the fact that you found the gun. You're trying to tell law enforcement you found the gun. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Pardon my French. Because here we are again. The fact of the matter is, let me give you a good example. So you have a cabin up in the mountains, a cabin gets broken into. You're told by law enforcement that the cabin was broken into. As soon as they tell you that, you have 5 days, 5 24-hour periods of time to get the report in. Now you can't even get the report in through local law enforcement if you live in Orange County. If my cabin's up in Mount Shasta, I got to get in my car or fly up there, and I got to drive all the way to Mount Shasta within 5 business days and do the report. The bill doesn't even allow you to amend the report. Let me give you a good example. So you go up there and you say, okay, grandpa's shotgun was here and my uncle's rifle was here. God, what the heck else was here? Then you, after you do the report, on day 12, your brother calls up and says, hey, was grandpa's shotgun in the cabin? You go, yeah, it was. Now, if I go back to law enforcement and say, hey, I want to amend my report, and I forgot grandpa's shotgun was on there, guess what? Now you've incriminated yourself in a crime. Because the law, this bill says that I have 5 days to report when I should have known or I could have known. So now you're criminalizing people who are trying to cooperate with law enforcement. What we should be doing is helping people report lost or stolen. The reason we want people to report lost or stolen guns, if a gun shows up in a pawn shop and it was stolen from me, I want the pawn shop to give me my gun back. So we should be creating a system that doesn't criminalize people and victimize victims of crime. I find it fascinating here where it's a legislature where we're decriminalizing a whole bunch of other things. But at the same time, we're going to criminalize the fact that a person who's trying to cooperate with law enforcement doesn't meet the 5-day deadline. Because here's your problem. They don't know, a person doesn't know about the bill. I've even said is that when a law enforcement officer comes out to the crime scene, if and when they show up, sometimes they send out reserve officers. like on day 8. I reported the crime on day 1. The reserve officer shows up on day 8. He says, hey, what was stolen? They don't even have to, they're not even required in the bill to tell you, Mr. Worley, your house was broken into 8 days ago. You're required by law to tell us now, standing here, what guns were in the house. I can't say, well, officer, you're right. I'd like to do that. I'll get back to you. Because guess what? The 5-day timeline is evaporated. So what is going to end up happening is I've talked to defense counsels. What's going to end up happening is defense attorneys are going to tell them not to talk to law enforcement. That's what's going to happen. So you're creating a disincentive for people to cooperate with law enforcement. If you think you're going to catch criminals who are lying about stealing guns, guess what? They're criminals. They're already criminals are lying about stealing guns. If you find a stolen gun someplace and you go back to the person who had the gun, and you said, hey, this gun showed up at a crime, they say, oh, well, the person will run in and do a lost and stolen gun report. Well, guess what? The gun was used in a crime. So there's a lot of evidentiary things you can do. You could get people as witnesses. You could bring them in there, find out if the gun was stolen illegally or the gun was sold illegally. So again, for all the reasons we've opposed the bill for year after year, and the reason the governor's vetoed the bill year after year, we continue to oppose the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm member Sam Paredes representing Gun Owners of California, and in this case, the California Firearms Policy Coalition has authorized me to testify on their behalf. Again, history and perspective. I remember my California legislative process class at Pepperdine University, where they instructed me that there's the judicial, the legislative, and the executive branch. You have the right to do anything that you want, to sponsor any bills, and then send them to the executive for signature and enactment into law. The governor has already vetoed this bill and given the reasons as to why. So that is fact. I hope you will take that into consideration. Now, there is a reasonably should have known standard in this thing, but let me tell you, as I mentioned earlier, that we have I think a well-deserved suspicion and concern with the government that is implementing these rules and regulations and standards and laws. It isn't us, the law-abiding citizens who have been victimized in the crime, that get to do the reasonable standard. It's the government that's going to decide what is reasonable and what is not. And excuse me if law-abiding citizens don't trust them to decide what is reasonable and what is not, as to when they should have known that a gun was stolen. That is not an acceptable standard that law-abiding gun owners should be hampered with or put on their shoulders, or potentially face a crime that will change their lives because they have a disagreement with the implementing authority as to when they should have reasonably known. For these reasons, our organizations are in strong opposition to this bill, and we agree with the governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others in opposition to the bill? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Monning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the author for bringing this forward. I'm sensitive to some of the concerns of the opposition. It would seem to me that having the timetable run from discovery of, you own that mountain cabin, there's a burglary there on April 1st, you don't visit there till May 15th, then you discover that you've been the victim of a burglary. Seems like that's when the timetable should run.
And that is when it runs, when you knew or reasonably should have known. If you don't go up to your cabin and you don't know that it's been broken into, how are you reasonably to know that there's, I mean,
Is it fair to say it's from discovery?
Yes, and we use this term frequently in the law, and with all due respect, there are people out there who don't agree with implementing authority on just about everything, but, you know, that's why we have a society with laws and rules, and this is just simply saying when you knew or reasonably should have known. And this is a standard phrase in jurisprudence. You have to have what they call mens rea. You have to have knowledge specifically when you reasonably should have known, so that this is not an attempt to punish people who have cabins and don't know that their guns that they have up there have been stolen, or in any kind of unreasonable fashion. If your house is broken into,
Thank you.
You have guns, you see the guns are gone, then you have to report.
Thank you. There's another point here that I haven't heard anybody make. Seems like there's a protection for the gun owner who's been the victim of a burglary or a theft, for that to be reported, so that if the gun is later used in a crime and it's traced to the original owner who was the victim of this theft, if that report's been made, it exculpates that gun owner from being a suspect in the crime. So I would think both for being a suspect in a crime and potential civil liability, it's in the interest of the victimized gun owner to report this as soon as possible, whether there's a legal requirement or not. But I would think it's good public policy to encourage gun owners who have their guns stolen to report the theft. Thank you.
I think Ms. Wilcox did have a response to that, or an observation that.
Well, I think also it's in their interest because many want to report the loss for insurance purposes, right?
Yeah. Senator Glazer.
Madam Chair, I think this is a very reasonable bill, and if appropriate, I'm happy to move it.
Thank you. The bill has been moved. Yeah, I was, Senator Liu.
I just wanted to know whether, or to two other bills, what is different in your bill?
Well, I think we're at a point now where we recognize, with all the straw purchases that are going around, with law enforcement coming in, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, my local police department, others, that it is time, that the time for this issue has also come, that we are seeing a greater and greater number of these guns that are being stolen, they're being used in crime, they're circumventing the law with these straw purchases, and when we look at the needs of society in terms of safety and weigh these issues, I believe that at this point in time, as we approach a discussion of gun violence with the governor and a series of bills that we brought, that this is part of a comprehensive and I think very effective program that actually does, I want to reiterate, help the gun owner as well as law enforcement to protect against the use of these lost or stolen guns in criminal activity. With that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. And I would note you also, I think the Brady campaign raised the issue of the ability to trace guns and find straw purchasers.
Yeah, and I just want to add in terms of your question about the governor, and we have been part of this, that certainly the National Brady campaign, in making the point that California has strong gun laws and many of our crime guns are coming from out of state where there are weaker laws. But as we've dug into the trace data more, we're seeing that 71% of the guns recovered in California and traced by law enforcement came from dealers in California. So we obviously have a problem within state in terms of particularly straw buyers buying from dealers in our state. So again, we need to disrupt that flow of illegal guns by getting those straw buyers, which is what this bill seeks to do. And hopefully the governor will, he likes data, and hopefully that will inform him next time around.
Senator Leno, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following up on Senator Moning's comment with regard to known or should have reasonably known, if I'm informed from local police that a property I own has been broken into and I'm hundreds of miles away, I don't have a suggestion here for you other than you might consider how some additional time might be allowed for me to get there if, let's say, I'm traveling out of the country and I may not be able to do the 5 days.
Sure.
So that's something, but it did concern me in that same comment from the opposition that, gosh, what other guns do I have there? Owning a gun may be a right, but rights come with responsibilities. These are deadly weapons, and if I own a gun or 2 or 5 or 10, I had better know where they are and where I can find them, and if they're not there, I would notice that they are gone. 2 reasons, I think, to support this bill beyond all the many that you've already stated, I think were underscored by Ms. Wilcox, which is that this can certainly benefit our armed prohibited persons program so that we're not squandering rare resources in tracking down guns that we should know have been already stolen and are not going to be there when we get there to apprehend them. And then additionally, that this is working in other states, so we're not reinventing the wheel here. So those were really good comments. Thank you for them.
Thank you. That could almost be your close, Senator Jackson.
With that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Please read the roll.
Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Glazer? Glazer, aye. Leno? Leno, aye. Liu? Liu, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Stone? Stone, no.
Okay, that bill passes 5-2.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Next, Senator Hall. Believe you're here, and DOJ, you could sit at the table.